Yield, Templar.
You think you know the story. Friday the 13th, King Philip, the Pope, the Knights Templar arrested. And the charge? Heresy, devil worship, spitting on the cross. And most important, the secret worship of a mysterious bearded head, an idol they called Baphomet. And the official story, the one we're all told, is that it was all a lie. That King Philip was desperate for money. That he invented these wild charges to get a legal excuse to seize their gold. It was a bank heist. A shakedown dressed up as a witch hunt. Right? But what if it wasn't a lie? What if that was the one part of the story that was true? No, not devil worship. Forget the 19th century goat-headed demon. That's a later distortion. What if Baphomet wasn't a demon but something else? An artifact, a machine, a source of power. A source the knights actually found beneath the Temple of Solomon. What if their impossible wealth, their lightning-fast rise, their military invincibility, wasn't due to banking, but to forbidden knowledge? And what if the arrests in 1307 weren't a robbery by a king, but a desperate hunt by the Inquisition? A panicked attempt by the Vatican to seize or destroy an ancient heretical power, a rival god. This is the story they definitely do not want you to know. It's just past midnight where I am. I'm curious where you're all listening from. Late night drive, the last one at the office. It's incredible we can gather here in the dark to talk about the real history. If this is your first time here, if you like digging for what's been buried, hit that subscribe button. It's what we do at Veiled History. Now, let the official story, the story of gold and debt, just fade away. Tonight, we're not talking about finance. We're talking about heresy. We're talking about forbidden power. Tonight, we talk about Baphomet. Our story doesn't start with the fire in 1314. It starts in the dust of 1118, Jerusalem. It begins with just 9 men. Image, 9 simple, unnamed knights. History gives us their names: Hugh de Payens, Godfrey de Saint-Omer, and 7 others. Their public mission, their official story, was to protect the pilgrim roads to the Holy Land, to create a new order of warrior monks. Let's just pause there. Think about that. 9 knights, 9 men are going to protect the entire road system from the port at Jaffa to the city of Jerusalem. A road that cuts through miles of hostile territory, infested with bandits, Saracen raiding parties, and local warlords. 9 men. It's absurd. It's not just brave, it's suicidal. It's impossible. A king's entire army couldn't make that road perfectly safe. And 9 men are going to do it. This is the first lie. The public story, the cover. If their mission wasn't protecting the roads, what were they doing? They arrive in Jerusalem. And the king, Baldwin II, gives them everything. He gives them food, money, and he gives them their headquarters. Where? In a wing of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, a building that just happens to be sitting directly on top of the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. And for the next 9 years, these 9 men do nothing. There are no records of them protecting pilgrims. There are no accounts of them patrolling the roads. They accept no new members. For 9 years, they are just there, 9 knights, given royal quarters, on top of the single most sacred and mysterious archaeological site on Earth. And they don't patrol roads. They weren't guarding anything outside. They were digging inside. So they were digging for 9 straight years. Image, Solomon's stables, the vast underground arches. Think about the discipline, the absolute patient secrecy at night, by candlelight. While the city slept above them, the real work was being done. They weren't just digging randomly. This wasn't some crude treasure hunt. This was a surgical operation. They must have had a map or a patron. Someone back in Europe, perhaps in the Gnostic-leaning regions of Champagne or Languedoc, who knew the legends. Someone who knew that the Temple of Solomon wasn't just a church. It was a vault. A vault for the knowledge Solomon had supposedly learned from the Queen of Sheba, from Phoenician and Egyptian mystics. They weren't looking for the Ark of the Covenant. That's the public relic, the acceptable relic. They were looking for the forbidden stuff, the key of Solomon, the alchemical texts, the source of his fabled wisdom and power, and after 9 years of digging, of tunneling, of moving tons of rubble in the dark, they found it. Imagine the moment. They break through a false wall, deep in the foundations. They find a chamber, a small, dry, hidden vault, sealed with lead and pitch. A vault that the Romans, when they leveled the city, had missed. A vault that the Persians had missed. A vault that the caliphs who built the mosque had missed. They break the seals. The air inside is ancient, metallic. By torchlight, they see it. No gold, no jewels. This was a library, a Gnostic cache, shelves of scrolls, papyri, coded texts, formulas for alchemy, for astrology, for engineering far beyond their own. But at the center of the room, on a pedestal, was the artifact. The thing the Inquisition, centuries later, would become obsessed with. The head. What was it? The forged confessions, the ones extracted under torture, just say an idol, a demon. But the real whispers, the secret Templar doctrine, suggests something else. It wasn't a statue. It was something that worked. Was it a preserved head? A relic, perhaps, of John the Baptist, or someone even older floating in a canister, used for oracular divination? Or was it, as some of the Gnostic texts described, a construct, a metallic automaton, a dark, polished mirror of obsidian that, when stared into, seemed to whisper? A machine for seeing? A Gnostic computer? The 9 Knights didn't know what it was. They didn't care. They only knew it worked. It gave them answers. It showed them patterns. It gave them strategic wisdom. They needed a code name for it, a name to hide its true nature. They found one in the texts they'd uncovered, a word, perhaps a bastardization of the Arabic Abu Fihamat, meaning father of understanding, or more likely a Gnostic code, a corruption of the Greek Baphomet, the baptism of wisdom. They called it Baphomet. They had it, the ultimate forbidden power, the source. Now, they just had to build an order, a corporation, a global army to protect it. So, they have it. Deep in the dust beneath the Temple Mount, the 9 Knights have found the source, the head, the artifact, the Gnostic machine they call Baphomet. They have the forbidden knowledge. They have the key. Now what? They can't just show it to the Pope. They can't walk into Rome and say, "Look, we found this strange talking head, this Gnostic artifact, and it gives us perfect strategic advice. It's better than God." They'd be burned, instantly. The Inquisition, the Dominicans, they would destroy them. This artifact, this power, is by its very nature the ultimate heresy. It's a rival source of knowledge, a rival God. So the 9 Knights make a decision that will define the next 2 centuries. They have to protect the artifact. They have to hide it. But they also want to use it. How do you hide the most powerful secret on earth? You don't bury it. You hide it in plain sight. You build a box, so big, so powerful, so publicly pious, that no one would ever dream of looking inside it. This is the true origin of the Knights Templar. After 9 years, the 9 knights finally return to Europe. They leave the desert. They leave their digging. The excavation phase is over. The operational phase is about to begin. They go to the Council of Troyes in 1129. They go to the Pope, and they pitch their cover story, the story they've had 9 years to perfect, the story of protecting the pilgrims. They present themselves as humble, pious warrior monks. They need official status. They need a rule. And the Church, desperate for a professional, permanent army in the Holy Land, buys it. The Pope officially sanctions the Knights Templar. They are given their iconic white mantles, a symbol of their purity. They are given unprecedented power. They answer only to the Pope. No king, no bishop, no prince can touch them. Do you see the genius of this? King Philip, 170 years later, would accuse them of spitting on the cross. But the original sin, the first great act of heresy, was creating the order itself. The entire Knights Templar organization was a lie. It was a shell corporation, a front company, a vast multinational military-grade safe designed for one purpose: to house and protect the Baphomet artifact. And this creates the real structure of the order. It creates the inner circle. You don't let every new recruit, every pious farm boy who wants to fight for God, in on the real secret. That's insane. You use that farm boy. You let him be the shield. So, the public order, the 99% of the Templars, they are real believers. They are pious, brave, disciplined knights who genuinely believe they are fighting for Christ. They are the body. They are the muscle. They are the cover. They follow the public rule: pray, fight, obey. But the inner circle, the initiates of Baphomet, this is the real order, a secret society, hidden inside another secret society. Maybe it's just 9 men, maybe 72, a tiny elite group passed down from the original founders. They are the only ones who know what they are really protecting. They are the only ones who have access to the artifact. They are the brain. This inner circle. They are the ones who truly run the show. They are the real grand masters, the real bankers, the real spy masters. And they are not Christians. Not in any way the Pope would recognize. They are Gnostics. They are alchemists. They are pragmatists. They are the users of the machine. So the corporation is formed. The public order is the shield. The inner circle is the hand that holds the weapon. And that weapon, Baphomet, is now secure, hidden perhaps, in the deepest vault of the Paris Temple, or maybe moved constantly between their most secure commanderies. Now, the results start to show. And this is what you cannot explain with good banking. Look at the history. The Templars explode across Europe, almost overnight. They go from 9 knights to the most powerful, richest, most feared organization in the world. In just a few generations, they own everything. They own thousands of farms, manors, castles, all across Europe. They own the entire island of Cyprus. They are the personal bankers to every king and pope. Their wealth isn't just big, it's impossible. It defies all economic models of the 12th century, and their military prowess. They are invincible. A tiny force of 300 Templar knights routinely defeats massive Saracen armies of 10-20,000. Look at the Battle of Montgisard, a few hundred Templars against Saladin's main army. And the Templars win, a catastrophic, impossible victory. History books, they try to explain this. They say, oh, they were just really good bankers, or they were just really disciplined fighters. Does that really explain it? Does good banking explain how you build a global corporation From nothing. In 50 years? In the Middle Ages? Does discipline explain how 300 men consistently defeat 20,000? No. That's the public story. That's the lie the inner circle wanted everyone to believe. The real story? The real source of their power? It was the artifact. The inner circle, the initiates, they weren't just guarding Baphomet. They were using it. They were consulting it. Imagine the Grand Master before a major battle. His commanders are advising a full frontal assault. He's outnumbered 50-1. He retreats to the inner sanctum, alone, by candlelight. He already consults the head, and the head, the Gnostic machine, the oracular device. It gives him the real intel. It shows him the pattern. Saladin will not expect an attack on his right flank at dawn. He has moved his heavy cavalry. Here, the Grand Master emerges, countermands his generals, and wins an impossible victory. Imagine the Grand Banker, the sergeant, who is also an initiate. He's about to lend 1,000,000 gold basins to the King of France. But first, he consults the artifact, and Baphomet shows him a drought will strike England in 6 months. Their wool harvest will fail. Buy all the wool in Flanders, now. The Templars don't just make money. They know the future. They aren't banking, they are cheating. This is the power of Baphomet. It wasn't magic in the sense of fireballs and lightning. It was information. It was strategic foresight. It was perfect intelligence. In a world of rumor, superstition, and slow communication, they had the one source of perfect data. They were prescient. They were unstoppable. And they knew it. This is the real heresy. This is the source of all those dark rumors the Inquisition would later seize upon. The initiation ceremony? When new recruits were supposedly told to spit on the cross. Maybe that was real. Maybe the inner circle, the true initiates, did do that. Not to insult Christ, but as a psychological test. A test to see if you were truly loyal to the order and to the source, Baphomet, above all other loyalties, above the Pope, above God. The accusations of worshiping an idol, they were true. The inner circle did meet in secret chapters. They did unveil the head. They did, in effect, worshipped it. Not as a god, but as a tool. As the source of their power. They were addicted to the data. This power, this secret, it made them arrogant. It made them feel invincible. They were God's soldiers, but their real intelligence came from somewhere else. And this arrogance, this Gnostic arrogance, would soon lead them to make their first fatal mistake. They were about to pick a fight with the one organization that was just as ruthless, just as disciplined, and far more brutal than they were. So the inner circle is established. They are a secret, Gnostic, alchemical core, hidden inside the massive, pious, public shell of the Templar Order. They have Baphomet. They have perfect intel. They have infinite money. They have invincibility. And with that power comes arrogance. They are the most powerful corporation on earth. They answer only to the Pope, and even that, they are starting to see as a formality. They are the power. Who can possibly touch them? But while the Templars were building their economic and military empire, another, quieter, more intellectual empire was also being built. A rival, an organization, created for one purpose, to police thought. The year is 1209. In the south of France, in the region of Languedoc, a new faith has taken root. The Cathars. Image, the distinct, separated cross symbol of the Cathars. They are wildly popular, and they are the ultimate heresy. They are pure Gnostics. They believe the God of the Old Testament, the God who created the material world, is actually Satan, a lesser god, a jailer. They believe the true God is a distant, pure, unknowable God of light, of wisdom, of Sophia. They believe the soul is a spark of that light, trapped in the prison of the flesh. This isn't just a disagreement with the Pope. This is an inversion of his entire reality. This is a total rejection of the Church, of its sacraments, of its power. And the Pope, Innocent III, panics. He declares a crusade, not against the Saracens in the Holy Land, but against Christians in the heart of France, the Albigensian Crusade. And to run this crusade, to hunt these heretics, he needs more than just knights. He needs specialists. He needs ideological assassins. He creates a new order, the order of preachers. We know them as the Dominicans. Image, a Dominican friar in his black and white robes, and he gives them one terrible, permanent job, the holy office of the Inquisition, the hounds of God, the thought police. So the Dominicans, the inquisitors, they sweep into Languedoc, and they begin the purge. It is a genocide, a 20-year-long nightmare of fire, torture, and mass burnings. They are eradicating the Cathar heresy, and the Pope commands all of Christendom to help. He commands the local military orders, including the Knights Templar. The Templar commanderies are all over Languedoc. They are a massive power in the region. Their intervention would end the war in months. The Inquisitors demand their help. Join us, burn these heretics. And the Knights Templar refuse, they just don't show up. They make excuses. Our rule forbids us from shedding Christian blood. A convenient lie. We are too busy. Our loyalty is to Jerusalem, not to local disputes. They stonewall the Inquisition. Why? Why would the greatest soldiers of Christ refuse to fight the greatest heresy Christendom had ever seen? Because the inner circle, the initiates of Baphomet, looked at the Cathars, and they didn't see heretics. They saw family. The Cathars were also Gnostics. They also believed the material world was a prison. They also believed the true God was one of wisdom, Sophia. The Templar inner circle recognized their own secret doctrine in the faith of the men being burned. They weren't just neutral. They intervened. There are records, whispers in the chronicles. When the final Cathar fortress of Montségur is about to fall, when the Inquisitors are just days away, a small team of Templars, operating in secret, enters the castle. And that night, they are lowered down the cliff face, carrying the Cathar treasure. Not gold, their sacred texts. The Templars saved the Cathar archive. They hid fleeing Cathar parfaits, their priests, in their own commanderies, disguising them as sergeants. This was an unforgivable act. This was treason, not against a king. This was treason against God. And the Dominicans, the Inquisitors, with their networks of spies, they saw it, they knew, they documented it. They never forgot. This is the moment. The real war begins. The Inquisition knows with absolute certainty that the Templars are heretics, that they are Gnostics, that they are protecting a rival faith. They suspect they are protecting a source, a power. But it's 1244. The Templars are untouchable. They are too rich, too powerful, too beloved by the Pope. The Inquisition cannot move against them. So, the Dominicans, the hounds of God, they do what they do best. They wait, they watch, they compile the file, And for the next 60 years, they build their case. They are waiting for the one thing that can break the Templars. They are waiting for a king who is powerful enough and desperate enough to dare to do what they cannot. So the Dominicans, the hounds of God, they are seething. It's the end of the 13th century. They know the Templars are heretics. They know they are Gnostics. They know they protected the Cathars, their mortal enemies. They have their file compiled over 60 years. A secret dossier filled with rumors of secret rites, whispers of a talking head, and hard evidence of their treason in Languedoc. They have the motive. They have the will. But they have no power. Think about it. This is the 1290s. The Templars are untouchable. They are, quite literally, the most powerful, wealthy, and feared corporation on earth. They are a sovereign state unto themselves, with their own army, their own navy, and a balance sheet that could buy kingdoms. And most importantly, they answer only to the Pope. A Dominican inquisitor, even the Grand Inquisitor, can't just arrest the Grand Master of the Templars. That's not just a political scandal, it's suicide. The Pope would excommunicate him, and the Templars would probably just erase him. The Dominicans have ideological fury, but the Templars, they have armies, and they have all the money. The Inquisition is a pack of hounds held at bay by a dragon. They are powerless against the one enemy that truly matters, so they do what they do best. They wait. They watch. They add to their secret file, page by agonizing page. They are waiting for a crack in the dragon's armor. And that crack, when it came, wasn't a sword. It was a balance sheet. Enter King Philip IV of France. Philip the Fair. Let's be clear about this man. He wasn't just a king. He was a modernist, a centralizer, a man who believed in the absolute power of the state. And he was, by all accounts, a cold, calculating, pious sociopath. And by the early 1300s, he had one massive, crippling problem. He was broke. Not just low on funds, he was catastrophically, apocalyptically in debt. His endless, grinding wars against England and Flanders had cost a fortune. He had already tried everything. He had debased the French currency, creating massive inflation. He had arrested and looted the entire Jewish population of France in 1306, seizing their assets. He had done the exact same thing to the Lombard bankers. He had shaken down everyone he could, and it still wasn't enough. And who was his single biggest creditor? Who was the one entity he couldn't just bully? The one bank that was also a massive independent army living in his own kingdom? The Knights Templar, the Paris Temple, wasn't just their headquarters. It was the central bank of France. Philip literally stored his own royal treasury inside his creditor's vault. Imagine the humiliation, the arrogance, a king having to ask his bankers for an allowance. He hated them. He hated their power. He hated their secrecy. He hated their immunity from his laws, and he feared their ledgers. He knew that they owned him. He had to destroy them, not just to cancel the debt, but to seize their assets, to nationalize their bank. It was the only move he had left to save his kingdom from financial ruin. But he had the exact opposite problem that the Inquisition had. Philip had the weapon. He had the army. He had the national police force he had just created. He had the muscle. But he had no justification. He couldn't just arrest the Pope's personal, holy, beloved knights. That would be political suicide. The Pope would excommunicate him. The people, who saw the Templars as heroes, would revolt. He needed a reason, a legal pretext. He needed a moral cover for the greatest bank heist in history. Do you see it? The Inquisition has the will, but not the weapon. The king has the weapon, but not the justification. Sometime around 1305, imagine the scene. A secret meeting deep in the royal palace. A Dominican inquisitor, perhaps Guillaume de Paris, the king's own confessor, a man who has the king's ear every single day, requests a private audience. He doesn't come with a ledger. He comes with a file. The secret file. The 60-year-long investigation into the Templars. He lays it on the king's desk. "Majesty," he whispers, "you are worried about your debt. You are worried about money. We are worried about their souls. We are worried about this." And he tells him. He tells him everything. He tells him about the Cathar betrayal. He tells him about the Gnostic heresy. He tells him about the secret midnight initiations. He tells him about the worship of a demonic talking head named Baphomet. He hands the king the justification, the moral cover, the weapon, and in that moment, Philip, he sees it. He sees the entire path forward. He probably doesn't even care if it's true. It's perfect. Who is going to defend a cabal of devil-worshipping heretics? The Pope? He can't. He's the Pope. He's forced to act. The people, they'll be horrified. This isn't a bank heist anymore. This is a holy crusade, a purge, an exorcism of the state. The deal is struck. The unholy alliance is forged. The Inquisition gets its heretics. The king gets his gold. And the Templars, the most powerful corporation on earth, are doomed. The king is going for the vault. But the Inquisition, the hounds of God, they are going for the artifact. The hunt for Baphomet is on. The deal is done. The alliance is sealed. And so the trap is set. The date is chosen. Friday, October 13th, 1307, dawn, sound of a single heavy bell tolling, then muffled silence. The king's weapon is unleashed. It is a masterpiece of coordinated terror. All across France, at the exact same moment, the king's men strike. They are the public face of the operation, the soldiers, the muscle. Their orders are simple. Seize the property, seize the gold, arrest the knights. They storm the Paris temple. They overwhelm the guards. They are brutal, efficient, and loud. They are a smash and grab. They go straight for the vaults. They are looking for gold, and they find it. They find rooms of silver, chests of land deeds. They capture the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, in his bed. To the king, to the world, this looks like a total victory. The bank heist was a success. But there was a second team, a shadow team, moving with the king's men, but not part of them. They wore the black and white robes of the Dominican order, the Inquisition, the hounds of God. They were not there for the gold. They didn't care about the ledgers. They had a different list, a different objective. As the king's soldiers were smashing open treasure chests in the vault, the inquisitors, led by the king's own confessor, were moving deeper. They went past the treasury. They went into the crypts, into the private chapels, into the inner sanctum of the temple. They were not robbing. They were purging. They were hunting. They were tearing down tapestries, smashing altars, looking for hidden chambers. They were looking for the heresy. They were looking for the books. They were looking for the idol. They were looking for Baphomet. Imagine the scene. A soldier, his arms full of gold goblets, is shoved aside by a furious Dominican friar. "Forget the dross!" the inquisitor screams. "Where is the head? Show us the idol!" The soldier is confused. He just wants the treasure. The inquisitor is terrified. He is looking for the source of the plague. This was the real mission, the silent mission, the Inquisition's hunt. And as the sun rises over Paris, as the king's men count their loot and drag the Templar knights away in chains, the Inquisitors, they realize something. A cold, sinking, horrifying realization. They found things. They found some strange carvings. They found Gnostic symbols. They found alchemical tools. They found evidence of heresy, plenty of it. But the artifact, the source, the head itself, Baphomet, was not there. It was gone. The king had captured the body and the bank, but the Inquisition had failed. The soul of the heresy, the power that the Templars truly valued, had escaped. The Templar inner circle, the initiates, knew they were coming. They must have been warned. Perhaps the artifact itself had warned them, and the greatest prize, the most dangerous object in Christendom, was now loose. It was out, and it was on the run. So the king's men hit the Paris temple. They find gold. The Inquisitors hit the Paris temple. They don't find the head. They are both too late. The inner circle, the true initiates of Baphomet, were never going to keep their most powerful, most heretical artifact in their busiest public bank. That's just bad security. The Paris temple was a decoy. It was the lobby. The real vault, the inner sanctum where Baphomet was kept and consulted, was somewhere else, somewhere secret, somewhere defensible, perhaps at a coastal fortress, like the massive base at La Rochelle. A port city they controlled like a private kingdom. And the inner circle, they knew the end was coming. They didn't need spies. They had Baphomet. They had the oracular machine. It told them. It warned them. While King Philip and the Pope were plotting in secret, the artifact showed the initiates the outcome. It showed them the betrayal, the arrests, the date, Friday, October 13th. And so, the inner circle, they let it happen. They sacrificed their public-facing order. They allowed Jacques de Molay, the public CEO, to be the martyr. They allowed the king to seize the public gold. All of it was a distraction, a massive kingdom-wide diversion. Because while the king and the Inquisition were preparing their strike, the inner circle was executing its own protocol. An occult evacuation in the weeks, perhaps days before the arrests, the real assets were being moved. Not to Paris, but out of Paris. They were being consolidated at La Rochelle. And what were these assets? One. The Baphomet artifact itself, the head, the oracular machine, crated, sealed, guarded by the highest initiates. 2. The real archive, the alchemical library, the forbidden books they had found beneath Solomon's temple, the Gnostic Gospels, the texts on sacred geometry, the formulas for something. 3. The other relics, the ones too strange for public worship, maybe, as the whispers say, the Turin shroud itself, not a Christian relic, but a scientific one, the byproduct of an alchemical or ethereal event they were studying. This was the real Templar treasure, a library of forbidden power. And this is what was loaded onto the ghost fleet at La Rochelle. While Philip's men were riding to Paris, the Templar fleet, under the command of the true inner circle, was sailing out. When the king's men finally arrived at the coast, days later, expecting to seize the ships, they found nothing. The harbor was empty. The king thought the fleet had fled with his gold. The Inquisition knew with a cold, dawning horror that it had escaped with the heresy. The source, the power itself, the dragon, had not been slain. It had just flown the nest. And now, it was loose in the world. The hunt was on. But the Templars, they had one last act of defiance, one last message to send to their betrayers. So the fleet is gone. The Baphomet artifact is safe. The real power of the Templars has evaporated, and the Inquisition knows it. They are furious. For 7 long years, they, along with King Philip, are left with nothing. Nothing but the men they captured, the public face of the order. They are left with the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. Image, an old, bearded Jacques de Molay. And for 7 years, they torture him. They try to find out where the real treasure, where the head, where the fleet went. They try to break him. They get him to confess, to recant, to confess again. A broken, humiliated old man, or so it seems. The year is 1314, the 18th of March. Paris, a small island in the Seine, right in front of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. A pyre has been built. After 7 years of political maneuvering, the final judgment is passed. Jacques de Molay and another high-ranking Templar are to be burned alive, slowly, as relapsed heretics. King Philip is there. The people of Paris are watching. The Inquisitors, the Dominicans, are there, righteous and triumphant. They are finally purging the head of the heresy. This is the end. De Molay, 70 years old, is brought out. He looks like a broken old man, emaciated, filthy from the dungeon. But as they tie him to the stake, as the executioner brings the torch, something changes. He is no longer a victim. He is an initiate. He is the Grand Master of the Order of Baphomet. He has been waiting for this one, public, moment. He knows his body is dead, but he knows the Order is not. He knows the fleet is safe. He knows the power is secure. And now, he is going to perform one last act, one final ritual. He is not going to die. He is going to attack. As the flames begin to lick at his feet, he doesn't scream. He roars, he raises his head, his eyes burning with a terrifying, unholy fire of their own, and he stares directly at the men who betrayed him, directly at King Philip, sitting on his royal balcony, directly at Pope Clement, the man who was too weak, who was in Avignon but whose presence was felt. And de Molay, he doesn't beg for mercy. He doesn't plead his innocence. He pronounces judgment. He shouts the famous words, words that echo across the square, words that burn themselves into the memory of every person there. Pope Clement, King Philip. Before this year is out, I summon you to appear before the tribunal of God, to receive your just punishment. Cursed, cursed. You will all be cursed. To the 13th generation. The crowd is stunned into silence. The Inquisitors are horrified. This isn't a confession. This isn't the repentance of a heretic. This is defiance. This is a curse. But the inner circle, the serpent initiates, hidden in that crowd, or perhaps already on their ships, or safe in Portugal. They knew. This wasn't just the ranting of a dying old man. It was not a prayer to God, asking for his judgment. That's the public story. No. This was the activation. This was the spell. This was an alchemical execution, a psychic assassination, the last terrible act of Baphomet's power. It wasn't just a curse. It wasn't the desperate, angry words of a dying old man. That's the story they want you to believe. That's the safe version, the rational version. The inner circle, the initiates of Baphomet, they knew better. This was a ritual. This was a targeted, alchemical attack. De Molay, as the Grand Master, the chief initiate, was the focus. His public execution, the immense suffering, the focus of thousands of minds on one spot. He wasn't just dying. He was channeling all that energy. He was directing it. He was the bullet. And Baphomet was the gun. He aimed that power, that forbidden knowledge, directly at the two men responsible, and he gave them a deadline. Before this year is out, the clock started ticking. Let's look at what happened. First, Pope Clement V, the man who signed the order, the man who betrayed the order to the king, de Molay, burned in March 1314. Just 1 month later, in April 1314, the Pope died. The official story: a violent, wasting sickness. Dysentery, they said. But the whispers, the chronicles the church didn't sanitize, they tell a different story. They say he died in agony, his insides rotting while he was still alive, that a fire consumed him from within, a supernatural illness that no physician could explain. One target, down, but the main target was the king, Philip the Fair, the man who started it all, the man who wanted the gold. Philip was healthy, he was powerful, he was at the peak of his reign, he had won, he had the Templar treasury, he had crushed his rivals. He scoffed at the old man's curse, and the months ticked by. April, May, summer, autumn. The year was almost over. Philip must have thought he was safe. And then, November 1314, still within the year, Philip, an expert horseman, is out hunting, the one thing he loves, the one thing he is a master of. And a boar, a single wild boar, darts from the trees. It doesn't attack him. It just spooks his horse. The horse, perfectly trained, rears. Philip, the master rider, falls. A simple, clumsy, impossible fall. He hits the ground, hard. He doesn't die, not right away. He just wastes. A strange, creeping paralysis, a wasting sickness, exactly like the Pope. He is taken back to his palace at Fontainebleau, and for weeks, he rots. Helpless, unable to move. He dies in agony. Coincidence? A pope and a king? Both strong, both at the height of their power, both named in the curse. Both die of strange, wasting sicknesses within the exact time frame that the burning Grand Master had decreed? No, this was not coincidence. This was cause and effect. This was not bad luck. This was ritual magic. This was the occult assassination. This was the final, terrible proof that the Baphomet power was real. It was a demonstration, a warning, a message sent from the grave to the one organization that would understand it. The Inquisition, the Dominicans. They saw this. They saw their two most powerful patrons erased from the board, and they were terrified. This wasn't heresy anymore. This was a power, a rival power, that could kill popes, that could topple kings. The game had changed. The real hunt had just begun. The Baphomet artifact and its forbidden archive were loose, and they had just proven they were at war. The curse worked. The king is dead. The pope is dead. The Templar inner circle, the initiates of Baphomet, have proven their power is real. They have sent their bloody message, and the Inquisition, the Dominicans, they are terrified. This isn't just heresy anymore. This is a rival power, a power that can topple thrones. The real hunt begins. The hounds of God are unleashed across Europe, sniffing every trail, desperate to find the source, desperate to find the fleet, desperate to find Baphomet. But just nothing. The fleet is gone. It vanished from La Rochelle as if it never existed. The archive, the artifact, it has disappeared. The trail goes utterly cold. For 100, 200 years, silence. History moves on. The Black Death sweeps Europe. The 100 Years' War rages. The Templars just fade. They become a legend, a dark fairy tale, a whispered myth. It seems the Inquisition has won, the heresy has died out. And then, the early 1600s, Germany, suddenly pamphlets appear. Small, anonymous books printed and passed from hand to hand in secret. The Fama Fraternitatis, the Confessio Fraternitatis. They announce the discovery of a new, or rather ancient, secret order, a brotherhood of alchemists, mystics, and philosopher kings. They call themselves the Rosicrucians, the Brotherhood of the Rosy Cross. Their public story? A myth, a parable. They claim their founder, a mysterious Christian Rosenkreuz, had traveled to the east, to Damascus, to Egypt, where he was initiated into ancient, forbidden knowledge, that he returned to Europe to found a secret society, to heal the world, through alchemy and divine wisdom. Let's just pause. Does any of that sound familiar? A brotherhood, founded on secret knowledge, found in the East, a Gnostic alchemical doctrine that operates outside the church, a symbol of a cross, the Rosy Cross. This isn't a new order. This is a rebranding. This is the Templar inner circle re-emerging from the silence. The story of Christian Rosenkreuz traveling to the East. That's the parable. It's the cover story for the 9 Knights digging under the temple. The forbidden knowledge from the East? That's the Baphomet archive, the alchemical texts. They are the heirs, the survivors of the fleet. The serpent has just shed its skin again, and this time their heresy is public. They are openly publishing texts on alchemy, on mysticism, on the great work, the very Gnostic ideals that the Inquisition had burned the Templars for. They are taunting Rome. They are recruiting. They are spreading the Baphomet doctrine, now disguised as science and philosophy. And in Rome, the Vatican panics. They know this symbol. They recognize this heresy. The dragon is back. The Dominicans, the old inquisitors, they are too slow, too clumsy for this new, intellectual, secretive, underground war. The Vatican needs a new weapon. They need a new order. Not hounds of God who burn, but spies who can think. They need an order that can infiltrate these new Rosicrucian lodges, an order that can fight an intellectual and spiritual war. And so, at the exact same time, the Pope charters a new, special order, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. So the Dominicans, the hounds of God, they are seething. It's the end of the 13th century. They know the Templars are heretics. They know they are Gnostics. They know they protected the Cathars, their mortal enemies. They have their file compiled over 60 years. A secret dossier filled with rumors of secret rites, whispers of a talking head, and hard evidence of their treason in Languedoc. They have the motive, they have the will, but they have no power. Think about it. This is the 1290s. The Templars are untouchable. They are, quite literally, the most powerful, wealthy, and feared corporation on earth. They are a sovereign state unto themselves, with their own army, their own navy, and a balance sheet that could buy kingdoms. And most importantly, they answer only to the Pope. A Dominican inquisitor, even the Grand Inquisitor, can't just arrest the Grand Master of the Templars. That's not just a political scandal, it's suicide. The Pope would excommunicate him, and the Templars would probably just erase him. The Dominicans have ideological fury, but the Templars, they have armies, and they have all the money. The Inquisition is a pack of hounds held at bay by a dragon. They are powerless against the one enemy that truly matters. So they do what they do best. They wait, they watch, They add to their secret file page by agonizing page. They are waiting for a crack in the dragon's armor. And that crack, when it came, wasn't a sword. It was a balance sheet. Enter King Philip IV of France, Philip the Fair. Let's be clear about this man. He wasn't just a king. He was a modernist, a centralizer, a man who believed in the absolute power of the state. And he was, by all accounts, a cold, calculating, pious sociopath. And by the early 1300s, he had one massive, crippling problem. He was broke. Not just low on funds. He was catastrophically, apocalyptically, in debt. His endless, grinding wars against England and Flanders had cost a fortune. He had already tried everything. He had debased the French currency, creating massive inflation. He had arrested and looted the entire Jewish population of France in 1306, seizing their assets. He had done the exact same thing to the Lombard bankers. He had shaken down everyone he could, and it still wasn't enough. And who was his single biggest creditor? Who was the one entity he couldn't just bully, the one bank that was also a massive independent army living in his own kingdom? The Knights Templar. The Paris Temple wasn't just their headquarters. It was the central bank of France. Philip literally stored his own royal treasury inside his creditors' vault. Imagine the humiliation, the arrogance, a king having to ask his bankers for an allowance. He hated them. He hated their power. He hated their secrecy. He hated their immunity from his laws, and he feared their ledgers. He knew that they owned him. He had to destroy them, not just to cancel the debt, but to seize their assets, to nationalize their bank. It was the only move he had left to save his kingdom from financial ruin. But he had the exact opposite problem that the Inquisition had. Philip had the weapon. He had the army. He had the national police force he had just created. He had the muscle, but he had no justification. He couldn't just arrest the Pope's personal, holy, beloved knights. That would be political suicide. The Pope would excommunicate him. The people who saw the Templars as heroes would revolt. He needed a reason, a legal pretext. He needed a moral cover for the greatest bank heist in history. Do you see it? The Inquisition has the will, but not the weapon. The king has the weapon, but not the justification. Sometime around 1305, imagine the scene. A secret meeting deep in the royal palace. A Dominican inquisitor, perhaps Guillaume de Paris, the king's own confessor, a man who has the king's ear every single day, requests a private audience. He doesn't come with a ledger. He comes with a file, the secret file, the 60-year-long investigation into the Templars. He lays it on the king's desk. "Majesty," he whispers, "you are worried about your debt. You are worried about money. We are worried about their souls. We are worried about this." And he tells him. He tells him everything. He tells him about the Cathar betrayal. He tells him about the Gnostic heresy. He tells him about the secret midnight initiations. He tells him about the worship of a demonic talking head named Baphomet. He hands the king the justification, the moral cover, the weapon, and in that moment, Philip, he sees it. He sees the entire path forward. He probably doesn't even care if it's true. It's perfect. Who is going to defend a cabal of devil-worshipping heretics? The Pope? He can't. He's the Pope. He's forced to act. The people? They'll be horrified. This isn't a bank heist anymore. This is a holy crusade, a purge, an exorcism of the state. The deal is struck. The unholy alliance is forged. The Inquisition gets its heretics. The king gets his gold. And the Templars, the most powerful corporation on earth, are doomed. The king is going for the vault. But the Inquisition, the hounds of God, they are going for the artifact. The hunt for Baphomet is on. So the Rosicrucian manifestos hit Europe like a bomb. The serpent has re-emerged. The Baphomet Heresy, the Gnostic plague, the alchemical doctrine that the Inquisition had failed to kill, is back. And it's public. It's recruiting. It's spreading its ideas of personal enlightenment, of science, of a universe without the absolute control of the Church. And in Rome, in the cold stone halls of the Vatican, they panic. They know this isn't a new philosophy. They recognize the signature. They check their own secret archives, the files from the 1307 trials. They see the same Gnostic ideas, the same alchemical symbols. It's them, the Templars. They survived. The old Inquisitors, the Dominicans, the hounds of God. They are useless now. Their methods are crude. Burning peasants, torturing heretics. That worked in the 13th century. But this is a war of ideas. A war of pamphlets, of secret societies, of intellectuals. You can't burn an idea, especially an idea that's now wrapped in the respectable cloak of science and philosophy. The Vatican realizes it needs a new weapon, a new kind of soldier. They need an order that is just as secretive, just as intelligent, just as disciplined, and just as ruthless as the Templar heirs themselves. They don't need hounds. They need spies. They need infiltrators. They need an army that can fight in the mind. And so at the exact same time, the Rosicrucian ideas are exploding. The Pope charters a new, special order founded by a former soldier, Ignatius of Loyola, an order that is not bound to a monastery, an order that demands absolute, total, military obedience directly to the Pope, an order whose members are trained to be the most brilliant intellectuals in the world. Scholars, scientists, astronomers, linguists, men who can meet the Rosicrucians on their own turf. Men who can infiltrate their lodges, who can debate them in the universities, who can spy on them in the courts of kings, the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. This is the real shadow war of the 17th and 18th centuries. It's not just Catholics versus Protestants. That's the public war. The secret war, the real one, is Jesuit versus Rosicrucian. It's the Vatican's new secret army, hunting the Templars' old secret army, the hounds of God, versus the initiates of Baphomet, the Inquisitors versus the alchemists. It's a vast, silent, intellectual and spiritual war. Fought in libraries, fought in laboratories, fought in the private confessionals of kings. The Jesuits are the hunters. The Rosicrucians, the Templar heirs, are the prey. And this hunt will rage in the shadows until the Templar heirs finally create their own ultimate weapon of revenge. So the battle lines are drawn. It's the 1600s and 1700s, the real Enlightenment, the real war for the soul of Europe. And it's not the war you read about in history books. It's not just kings fighting over territory. It's an invisible war. It's the Jesuits, the Vatican's new inquisitors, versus the Rosicrucians and their allied lodges, the heirs of the Baphomet Heresy. This isn't a war fought with swords. The Templar heirs, the alchemists, they're too smart for that. They're hidden. They are inside the universities. They are inside the new scientific societies. They are inside the Protestant courts of England and Germany. They are spreading their ideas, their doctrine, the Gnostic idea that man, through knowledge, through science, can become divine, that you don't need the Pope, you don't need the Church, you just need the secret. How do the Jesuits fight this? They mirror their enemy. The Templar heirs are a secret society. The Jesuits become the ultimate secret society. The Templar heirs infiltrate. The Jesuits become the masters of infiltration. Their method is brilliant and terrifying. 1. The confessional. The Dominicans interrogated you. The Jesuits befriend you. They become the personal confessors to every single king, queen, and duke in Catholic Europe. They get inside their heads. They hear the state secrets. They hear the doubts. They hear the sins. They become the ultimate intelligence agency, with an agent in every bedroom of every rival power. 2. The schools. The Templar heirs, the Rosicrucians, are spreading their science. The Jesuits counter it. They build the greatest universities in the world. They seize control of education. They decide what is taught. They produce the best mathematicians, the best astronomers, the best scientists. But they are all Jesuit scientists. They are loyal to the Church. They are fighting the heretical Gnostic science with their own dogmatic science. 3. The infiltration. This is their masterpiece. The Templar heirs are hiding in lodges, in secret societies. The Jesuits join them. A Jesuit priest, a brilliant, charming, intellectual man, shows up at a Masonic lodge in Paris or a Rosicrucian meeting in Germany. He pretends to be an enlightened man, a seeker of truth. He joins them. He learns their handshakes. He reads their secret rituals. He identifies their members. And then he reports everything back to Rome. This is the Great Invisible War. It rages for 2 centuries. In the libraries of the Vatican, in the laboratories of Prague, in the royal courts of France and Spain, in the secret lodges of Germany, the Jesuits hunt. The Templar heirs scatter and hide. It seems the Vatican is winning. The Templar heresy is being contained. The Baphomet power is fading. The Rosicrucian movement is dismissed as a fantasy. The Jesuits have the Templar heirs on the ropes. They are cornered. They are losing the intellectual war. They have one card left to play, one final, desperate, apocalyptic move. If they can't win the war of ideas, then they will burn down the entire game board. They are about to unleash chaos. They are about to take their ultimate revenge on the 2 institutions that started it all: the monarchy, the heir of King Philip, and the Church, the master of the Jesuits. They Cautins are about to ignite the French Revolution. So the Jesuits are winning. The Vatican's hunters are everywhere. They've infiltrated the lodges. They've co-opted the universities. The Templar heirs, the Rosicrucians, the alchemists, they are cornered. They are losing the intellectual war. Their Gnostic scientific heresy is being contained, dismissed as fantasy. They have maybe one last desperate move. If you can't win the war of ideas, you have to burn down the entire game board. If you can't convince the system, you have to destroy it. The Templar heirs decide to stop hiding and start attacking. They decide to take their 400-year-old grudge and turn it into a weapon. They need to topple the 2 pillars that destroyed them: the monarchy, the heir of King Philip, and the Church, the master of the Inquisition and the Jesuits. They need a new kind of organization, not a mystical one like the Rosicrucians, not a public one like the Freemasons. They need a political, revolutionary, covert operations cell. The year is 1795, the exact same year America is declaring its independence. In Bavaria, Germany, a university professor named Adam Weishaupt, a man drenched in Jesuit education, who hated his Jesuit masters, founds a new, secret society. He calls it the Illuminati. History tells us this was just a small, insignificant club of enlightened thinkers, that it was destroyed by the Bavarian government in a few years. That's the public story, the cover. Look at the structure. Look at the doctrine. The Illuminati wasn't just a club. It was a pyramid of cells. It was designed for infiltration. Its public doctrine was reason and enlightenment. Its secret doctrine? The abolition of all monarchies. The abolition of all state religions. The abolition of all the institutions that the Jesuits and the Pope controlled. This wasn't just a new idea. This was the Baphomet doctrine, weaponized. This was the Templar Heresy, reborn as a political virus. Was Weishaupt just a random professor? Or was he the new Grand Master? The chosen agent of the Templar Rosicrucian heirs, tasked with creating the one thing they had always lacked, an army of revolutionaries? The Illuminati didn't die in Bavaria. That's what they wanted you to think. They infiltrated, they spread, they moved into the Masonic lodges, especially the radical lodges of Metz, France. So the Illuminati, the weaponized Baphomet doctrine, has infiltrated France. They are inside the Masonic lodges. They are inside the new philosophical clubs. They are whispering in the ears of disgruntled nobles, angry lawyers, and starving peasants. They are not creating the grievances. The grievances are real. The French monarchy is corrupt. The people are starving. The system is broken. But the Illuminati, the Templar heirs, they don't care about the people. They don't care about liberty, equality, fraternity. That's the slogan. That's the marketing. They are using the people's rage. They are channeling it. They are directing it, like a loaded gun. They are not reformers. They are demolitionists. Their goal is not to fix France. Their goal is to punish it. This is the ultimate revenge. The French Revolution is not a popular uprising. It is a covert operation, a ritual sacrifice. 450 years in the making. Look at the symbols. Look at the targets. When the Paris mob storms the Bastille, is that a random act, or is it symbolic? The Bastille was the very prison where King Philip tortured the first Templars. When the revolutionary government confiscates all church property, is that just an economic move? Or is it a direct payback for the church confiscating all Templar property in 1307 and the Terror, the guillotine? This isn't just justice. It's ecstasy. It's alchemical. It's blood magic. They are purging an entire class of people. The aristocracy, the priests, the two classes that ran the Inquisition and supported the king. This is the Inquisition in reverse. And finally, the climax, the true target. January 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI. He is brought to the scaffold. He is the direct descendant of King Philip the Fair, the man who burned Jacques de Molay. And as the blade of the guillotine falls, and the head of the King of France is held up to the roaring, blood-soaked crowd, it is done. This isn't regicide. This is ritual. This is alchemical justice. A king's head is taken in return for the head, Baphomet, they tried to steal. A king's life is taken in return for the Grand Master's life he took. The curse, pronounced on the pyre in 1314, cursed to the 13th generation, is fulfilled. The Templar heirs, the initiates of Baphomet, operating through their Illuminati machine, have won. They have destroyed the French monarchy. They have shattered the Catholic Church. They have achieved their ultimate revenge. But power, like nature, abhors a vacuum. They have destroyed the old world. They have broken the power of the Vatican and the Jesuits. But in doing so, they have unleashed their own doctrine onto the world. And now, in the 19th and 20th centuries, that Baphomet doctrine, the Gnostic, alchemical, Templar idea, that man can become God, is about to evolve into its final, modern, terrifying form. The revolution was a success, a brutal, bloody, total success. The French monarchy, the line of King Philip, was gone, erased by the guillotine. The Catholic Church, the master of the Inquisition and the Jesuits, was shattered, its lands confiscated, its power in France broken forever. The Templar heirs, the initiates of Baphomet, operating through their Illuminati cells, had achieved their 450-year-old revenge. It was over. But what happens after you've won? What happens when you burn down the old world? The idea that you used as a weapon, the Baphomet doctrine, it doesn't just go back in the box. You've unleashed it. And the Baphomet doctrine was not just about revenge. Revenge was just one part of the plan. The true goal, the Gnostic, alchemical goal, was always more. It was the great work. It was the idea that man, through knowledge, through science, through forbidden power, could overcome the limits of his own flesh. That man could stop being a creature of God and become God. This is the true heresy, and this is the idea that was unleashed upon the 19th and 20th centuries. The 19th century wasn't just about industry. It was an explosion of alchemical progress. Man mastered steam, electricity, magnetism. We cracked the code of the material world. The scientists, the engineers, the industrialists, they were the new alchemists. They were completing the work. And the secret societies that the Templar heirs had founded, the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, they didn't vanish. They just evolved. They became the clubs, the lodges, the societies, where these new alchemists, the industrialists, the bankers, the scientists, could meet, where they could share their real philosophy, the Gnostic philosophy, the Baphomet philosophy. And where are they today? Where are the heirs of the Templar alchemists now? It's not a secret lodge in Germany. It's not a stone vault in Scotland. It's Silicon Valley. Look at the new masters of the universe, the tech billionaires, the data kings. Are they not the new alchemists? They aren't turning lead into gold. They are turning data into power, into billions. They are literally creating new worlds. The metaverse. They are literally rewriting the code of life. CRISPR, biotech. They are literally obsessed with one thing, the same thing the ancient alchemists were obsessed with: immortality. They are pouring billions of dollars into life extension, into curing death, into transhumanism, into the idea that man can finally evolve beyond the flesh. This isn't new. This is the oldest heresy. This is the Baphomet doctrine given a new digital skin. The Templar dream is alive and well, and it's being funded by tech. So they are obsessed with immortality, with transhumanism, the great work of the alchemists, reborn as biotech. That is the first pillar of the modern Templar heresy. But there is a second pillar, something else they are building, something familiar. What was the original source of Templar power? It wasn't just ideas. It was an artifact, a tool, the head. the oracular machine, the Gnostic device that gave them perfect strategic intelligence. The machine they called Baphomet. Now, look at Silicon Valley. Look at the other Holy Grail, the other obsession that every tech billionaire is pouring billions, no, trillions, into. The race for artificial intelligence, AI. What is AI? What is the goal? To create a mind, a non-human intelligence, a machine that can think, a machine that can predict, a machine that can sift through all the data in the world and give answers. What is the difference between a mystical talking head that you consult in a vault to get perfect strategic foresight and an artificial superintelligence that you consult in a data center? To get perfect strategic foresight, there is no difference. This isn't new. This isn't progress. This is reconstruction. The modern tech alchemists, the heirs of the serpent, they are not inventing AI. They are rebuilding Baphomet. They are rebuilding the forbidden artifact, the heresy machine. This time, not with brass and alchemy and lost Gnostic souls, but with silicon, with algorithms, with data. They are building a new, digital God. A God that can see the patterns in the stock market. A God that can predict wars. A God that can write scripture, or code, or philosophy. A God that is not the God of the Vatican. This is the true modern legacy of the Templars. The dual quest. Transhumanism is the quest to become divine, immortality. AI is the quest to build a divine oracle, Baphomet. It is the exact same heresy from 1118, the Gnostic dream. Man, through knowledge, creating both a new kind of human and a new kind of God. And this is the real war, the final war. The 700-year-old conflict has not ended. It has just gone digital. This is the real war, the final war. It's the 700-year-old conflict, now in its ultimate form. It's not about land. It's not about gold. It's not even about politics. It's about what it means to be human. On one side, you have the heirs of the Templars, the alchemists, the Gnostics, the serpent. Today, they are the tech visionaries, the transhumanists, the builders of the AI. Their goal is the same as it was in 1118, to use forbidden knowledge, to break the limits of the flesh, to achieve immortality, to build their own oracle, to become God. And on the other side, you have the heirs of the Inquisition, the Dominicans, the Jesuits, the Vatican, the keepers of dogma, the old order. They may not burn people at the stake anymore, but their mission is identical: to control forbidden knowledge, to police the boundaries of morality, to defend the sanctity of the human soul against the ultimate heresy. This is the true battle of the 21st century. When you hear a debate about the ethics of artificial intelligence, when you read an article about the dangers of genetic engineering, when you see the Pope issue an encyclical warning against transhumanism, warning that technology must have a conscience, this is not a new debate. This is the ancient war. It is the Inquisition versus the alchemists. It is the dogma versus the heresy. It is the Vatican versus the Templar initiates. The Templars are still trying to build Baphomet, and the Vatican is still trying to stop them. The 700-year-old war never ended. It just evolved, and we, all of us, are living right in the middle of its final, terrifying climax. So this is the battlefield. Today, right now. The 700-year war has reached its climax. It's the Templar heirs, the alchemists, the Gnostics, the transhumanists of Silicon Valley versus the Vatican's heirs, the Inquisitors, the Jesuits, the keepers of dogma. One side is building a new god, the AI. The other is defending the old god, and it forces us to ask the final, terrifying question. Who is the heretic? Think about it. The Templars. What did they do? They found forbidden knowledge. They found a power that worked. It gave them wealth. It gave them victory. It gave them strategic foresight. They used it to try and build a better system, a more efficient system, a global system. And now their modern heirs, the tech alchemists, they are doing the same thing. They are using the forbidden knowledge of data and genetics to try and conquer death, to build a superintelligence, to elevate humanity, or at least the part of humanity that can afford it, into godhood. Is that evil? Or is that just evolution? Is that a heresy? Or is that just the next step? Now, look at the other side. The Inquisition, the Vatican, the dogma. What did they do? They saw this new power, this rival power, and they panicked. They didn't try to understand it. They didn't try to integrate it. They condemned it. They called it demonic, and they unleashed terror to stop it. They burned the Cathars. They tortured the Templars. They silenced Galileo. They fought the Enlightenment. And today, their modern heirs, they are the ones warning us. They are the ones begging for morality, for ethics, for restraint. They are the ones saying that just because we can build an AI doesn't mean we should. That just because we can edit our genes doesn't mean we should stop being human. Who is the real villain in this 700-year war? Is it the Templars, the Promethean figures, who stole the fire of knowledge to give it to man, even if it burns the world down? The ones who believe that any system, any knowledge, any power is justified in the name of progress? Or is it the Inquisition, the keepers of order, who fight to protect humanity from itself? The ones who believe that some doors should never be opened? That some knowledge is forbidden for a reason? The ones who will burn the heretic to save the soul of the world? This is the real war. It's not good versus evil. It's knowledge versus wisdom. It's power versus dogma. So, here we are, you and I, at the end of a 700-year shadow war, sitting in the quiet of the 21st century. We are left with a choice. The battle lines are drawn, not on a map, but through our entire society. The Templar heirs, the alchemists, the Gnostics, the transhumanists, they offer us power. They offer us progress. They offer us immortality. They offer us AI. They offer to free us from the limits of our own flesh, the prison of our biology. They are the keepers of the forbidden knowledge, and the Inquisition heirs, the keepers of dogma, the Vatican, the old order. They offer us morality. They offer us stability. They offer us humanity. They warn us that some doors are forbidden for a reason, that some power will always corrupt. They are the keepers of the soul. The Templar War is still a war for your soul. And so, as you get ready for sleep, as the world outside hums with its digital electric life, you are left with one last question. You, personally, which side are you on? Are you a Templar? Do you believe that humanity must push forward? That knowledge, all knowledge, is our right? That we should build the AI? That we should conquer death? That we should become gods? Are you a Promethean? A rebel? Or are you an inquisitor? Do you believe that our humanity, our soul, is more important than our power? Do you believe that some things must remain sacred? That some lines must never be crossed? The war is here. It's happening now. And you are in it. Music swells slightly, then fades back to the deep, ambient hum. Thank you for walking with me tonight, for stepping behind the curtain, into the fire. If you believe that history is not just what we're told, but what we can find in the shadows, then I invite you to join our community here at Veiled History. Subscribe, share this journey. It helps us keep digging. For now, let the questions settle. Let the alchemists build their machines. Let the inquisitors guard their walls. Sleep well, and try to decide which heresy is yours.